On a rainy Sunday in Cedar Ridge, Oregon, 911 dispatch received a chilling call. A woman, breathless and whispering, reported that something terrible had happened at the Jennings family residence. By the time officers arrived 12 minutes later, the house was still, the door slightly ajar, and silence pressed against every wall inside. 4 members of the same household were found dead. Only one person was missing, Elena Jennings, the family's eldest daughter. There were no signs of forced entry. No struggle in the common areas. The front lawn, usually trimmed, hadn't been mowed in weeks. The hallway light blinked, on, off, on again, as investigators stepped over the threshold and into a home that had gone cold long before the bodies did. Neighbors described them as a quiet, tight-knit family. Carl Jennings was a high school math teacher. His wife, Denise, worked part-time at the local library. They had 3 children, Elena, 23, Chloe, 17, and Michael, 14. Elena had moved out 3 years prior, but returned home just weeks before the killings. She said it was temporary. She needed space from the city. But in retrospect, every interaction she had with her family in those final weeks carried a strange tension. Her mother's expressions seemed guarded, her younger sister withdrawn, and Michael, normally glued to his video games, had been spending more time locked in his room. For the first few days, it was treated as a possible break-in, but there were inconsistencies. No valuables were taken. The house was alarmed, yet no alarms went off. And most telling of all, every victim had been killed with a dose of the same prescription sleeping pills. Mixed into their dinner. The plates were still in the dishwasher. The table had been wiped clean. There was no blood, no mess, just 4 lives. Ended while they slept. As the news broke across Cedar Ridge, panic gripped the community. Who could have done this? And why? But when investigators reviewed the security footage from a neighbor's doorbell camera across the street, the case took a sharp turn. At exactly 11:48 p.m. The night before the murders, a woman was seen walking calmly out of the house, dressed in black, carrying a duffel bag. Facial recognition was unnecessary. It was Elena, and she wasn't crying. She was smiling. Elena Jennings was never the same after her sophomore year at Portland State. Once a promising psychology major with a full ride, she dropped out midway through her second semester. The reason she gave her family was vague. College isn't for me. But there were rumors, talks of a breakdown, a professor she threatened, and an internal inquiry that the university kept sealed. Whatever happened, Elena came home different. She moved into a basement apartment downtown. She worked odd jobs, dog walking, barista shifts, even a short-lived gig at a funeral home. For months at a time, her parents wouldn't hear from her. And when she did reach out, it was always when she needed something, money, a place to stay, or both. Carl, the father, was always the peacemaker. Stern, yes, but never harsh. He believed in second chances. Denise, on the other hand, had grown wary. She kept a journal, found later during the investigation, where she detailed her concerns about Elena's erratic behavior. She watches the kids when she thinks no one sees. One entry read, "She asks about our will more than any child should." Chloe, the middle child, was in her final year of high school. Brilliant, soft-spoken, and an aspiring classical pianist. She and Elena used to be close when they were younger, but that changed. Chloe confided in a friend that Elena made her feel on edge, like something wasn't quite right when they were alone. She didn't know why. She just felt it. Michael, the youngest, adored Elena when he was a child. She used to read him fantasy novels and buy him candy with her lunch money. But by the time she returned home that last time, the bond had eroded. Michael avoided her entirely, going as far as to sleep with headphones in even when she wasn't around. His school counselor, in a private note, described him as a kid who's carrying something too big for his age. From the outside, they still looked like a normal suburban family. Barbecues on the weekend, family game nights, church on Sundays. But underneath, there was a quiet corrosion, one that spread slowly, hidden behind dinner smiles and polite phone calls. What brought Elena home that summer remains debated. Some say it was financial strain. Others claim she was facing eviction. But whatever her reasons, she returned with more than a suitcase. According to her ex-roommate, she'd been researching inheritance laws. More than once, she asked strange hypothetical questions. What happens to money in a trust if the whole family dies? Can you collect insurance if you're not the beneficiary, but the only one left? These weren't just passing thoughts. They were rehearsals. The change in Elena didn't just happen overnight. Her childhood was marked by moments of isolation. A therapist who treated her briefly at 15, after an incident involving a cat she'd hidden in the attic for days, described her as emotionally compartmentalized. She didn't express remorse when others were hurt. She mimicked empathy, but didn't seem to feel it. Denise, her mother, once mentioned in passing to a colleague at the library, "I think something's broken in her, and I don't know how to fix it." There were other warning signs. Elena had been caught once attempting to alter her father's medication dosage when she was home the year prior. Carl dismissed it as a mistake. She didn't know how strong it was, he told the doctor. But Denise never forgot. She started locking the cabinet where the medicine was kept. She didn't tell the kids. She didn't tell Carl either, at first. The journal she left behind revealed that she had begun to suspect Elena might be dangerous. Not just troubled, dangerous. But no one listened. Because families don't think like that. They rationalize. They hope. They assume love is enough to keep harm away. The final family dinner was Elena's idea. She insisted on cooking. Just like old times, she told them. She prepared chicken marsala, one of Carl's favorites, with a side of mushroom risotto. She even brought home a dessert, blueberry crumble from a bakery downtown. They complimented her. Said it tasted amazing. That night, all four went to bed early. By morning, none of them would wake up. The morning sun spilled over the quiet cul-de-sac where the Jennings family lived. It was just after 8:17 a.m. when Dana Holloway, their next-door neighbor, realized something was off. The Jennings trash bins were still on the curb, untouched since pickup day. Their newspapers sat uncollected. Carl's blue Honda remained in the driveway, which was rare. He typically left for the office by 7. Dana knocked once, then twice. No answer. Through the frosted glass of the front door, she saw the hallway light still on. It had been glowing since the night before. By 8:42 a.m., Dana called the non-emergency line. Her voice, later played in court, wavered with unease. "I'm not saying something has happened, but this isn't right. They don't ignore calls. Denise is the type to text back before you finish typing." Officers Joel Herrera and Kate Mullins arrived just before 9 a.m. They rang the doorbell. Waited. Knocked. Waited. The silence inside felt too thick. As protocol allowed, they checked windows and found the kitchen one slightly ajar. Mullins slid it open, climbed in, and entered first. What she encountered was not a scene of chaos, but of eerie stillness. The air smelled faintly metallic, laced with something sour. 4 bodies were found across the house, each in their beds, appearing undisturbed. No forced entry. No signs of a struggle. No broken furniture or overturned lamps. But something was wrong with their faces. Carl's mouth had dried into a tight grimace, as if frozen mid-breath. Denise lay curled slightly, her hand clutching her stomach. Chloe's room held a peculiar chill. The windows cracked slightly, but the thermostat untouched. Michael still wore his headphones. His screen had gone dark, paused on a Minecraft menu. Officer Mullins' call to dispatch was clinical but clipped. For presumed deceased. No trauma. No immediate signs of foul play. Requesting coroner and hazmat. Strong chemical odor present. Within hours, the Jennings residence was sealed off, draped in yellow tape, and swarmed by crime scene technicians in full-body suits. Forensic analyst David Renner was among the first to step inside. He would later describe the scene as eerily clean. Too clean. Like someone staged it to appear peaceful. Toxicologists were immediately suspicious. The bodies showed early signs of internal distress, subtle cyanosis on the lips, minor frothing at the mouth. But the house itself was spotless. No overturned pill bottles. No syringes. No obvious clues, except one. In the kitchen trash bin sat 2 empty containers of foraged mushroom kits, the kind sold in organic stores as novelty grow-your-own sets. Harmless on their own, but someone had tampered with the packaging. Renner's team also noted a strange residue on the inside rim of a wine glass found near the sink. Not fingerprints, those were wiped clean, but a fine, powdery film. Something inorganic. Tests would later confirm it was a synthetic compound with paralytic properties, difficult to trace, more common in research labs than kitchens. And there was one other detail. Elena was nowhere to be found. The initial report listed her as a possible victim. Her room was neat, untouched. Her bed unslept in. But the closet? Empty. Her drawers? Bare. The closet safe where Denise stored important documents gone. And the family's second vehicle? Missing. An Amber-style alert was issued before the day ended, not for a child, but for a 27-year-old woman now considered a person of extreme interest. By nightfall, police began combing surveillance footage. Gas stations, ATMs, traffic cams. At 5:36 a.m., hours before Dana's call, Elena was captured on CCTV at a 24-hour Chevron 2 towns over. She was alone. She bought bottled water, gum, and prepaid cell phone cards. The timestamp aligned with what investigators would later call the window of disappearance. Back at the house, autopsies were fast-tracked. Dr. Harlan Bishop, chief medical examiner for the county, performed all 4 in under 18 hours. Each victim had trace amounts of amanitin in their system, specifically alpha-amanitin, the active toxin in death cap mushrooms. It causes liver failure, but slowly. The timing was deliberate. Based on gastric contents and biochemical analysis, the poison had been ingested roughly 10 to 12 hours before death, likely during dinner. Bishop's report was chillingly precise. All victims died in their sleep. Systemic organ failure began between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Paralysis likely occurred before full unconsciousness. This was not a painless death. That line would haunt the case forever. Elena's fingerprints were found only on the wine glass, the mushroom containers, and the serving utensils. All the dinner plates were hand-washed. But inside the dishwasher, which hadn't been run, police found a floral-patterned apron with dried mushroom residue. Embedded in the hem were 2 long, dark strands of hair, matched to Elena's DNA. The media erupted. The Jennings family became front-page material. Sunday supper slaughter. The mushroom murders. Poisoned by blood. The peaceful facade of suburban life was cracked open, revealing a story darker than anyone imagined. And still, no sign of Elena. She had vanished before the bodies were cold. The day after the Jennings tragedy broke, the name Elena Jennings ignited like wildfire across every news outlet and social media platform. She wasn't just a suspect. She had become a symbol of betrayal that stunned the nation. Local anchors in Crestwood led with terms like family killer and poison heiress. National outlets weren't far behind. Photos of Elena, some smiling beside birthday cakes, others snapped from family vacations, were plastered on screens and newspaper covers. Most couldn't reconcile the gentle eyes in those images with the horror that unfolded inside the Jennings home. But law enforcement didn't have the luxury of confusion. By day 2, the case had shifted from investigation to pursuit. A trail of disguises. At 3:12 p.m., the day after the murders, Elena's vehicle, a silver 2017 Subaru Forester, was located 82 miles west of Crestwood, abandoned in the parking lot of a rural nature preserve. No fingerprints. No personal items. Just a smudge of lipstick on the driver's side window. Surveillance from a nearby bait shop captured what appeared to be Elena. Hair dyed black, oversized hoodie, sunglasses, climbing into a white cargo van. The license plates were stolen. The trail ran cold. The FBI joined the case on the 4th day. Special Agent Marissa Train was assigned to coordinate federal resources. Her tone during the initial press briefing was measured but firm. We are pursuing a person of interest in a multi-homicide case. She has medical knowledge, psychological training, and a demonstrated ability to manipulate appearances. This is not someone operating impulsively. She planned this. The public, however, was split. Some labeled her a monster. Others whispered darker, more complicated theories. That maybe she was framed. That maybe her parents weren't who they seemed. That maybe someone else had been pulling strings. She had become something more than a fugitive. She was a cultural flashpoint. Carl and Denise's life insurance policies had recently been updated. Elena had been added as the sole secondary beneficiary, just weeks before the incident. Combined, the payout would exceed $1.4 million. Suspicious? Yes. But legal? Also yes. Then came a bombshell. Denise's private journal, discovered in a password-protected file on her laptop. It revealed a tense, toxic relationship with Elena over the previous year. Accusations of manipulation. Therapy sessions. Talk of removing her from the will. In one dated entry, Denise wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if we invited a stranger to live with us again. She wears our last name like it fits, but I'm not sure she ever belonged in this family." On day 11, authorities believed they had her cornered. A woman matching Elena's description was spotted in a hotel near Savannah, Georgia. A team was dispatched. The hotel was evacuated, nearby roads shut down. But the woman was a 29-year-old grad student from Texas, confused and terrified when armed agents burst into her room. That same night, traffic cameras caught a woman with a matching build crossing the border into New Mexico in a stolen pickup truck. She was wearing medical scrubs and a hospital ID badge with the name Dr. Eleanor Jensen. The badge was fake, but the disguise? Flawless. Elena had medical training from her unfinished doctoral studies. She knew how to blend in, how to vanish, how to mimic without becoming. Crestwood wasn't the same. Restaurants stayed half empty. Parents held their children tighter. The once quiet suburb now felt like it breathed differently, uneasy, shallow breaths. Fear lingered in grocery stores, school drop-off lines, neighborhood watch meetings. A mural of the Jennings family went up near the town square, but was defaced twice in the same week. Some blamed Elena. Others blamed the family for hiding what they called the brewing storm inside their perfect house. The town was divided between those seeking justice and those seeking truth. And at the center of it all, one woman, vanished voiceless and yet everywhere. By the third week of the manhunt, law enforcement had exhausted physical leads. The vanishing act had worked. But to catch Elena Jennings, they realized they needed to understand her, not just track her. That's when they turned to her past. Elena was a brilliant student. That much was never in doubt. Her professors at Danforth University described her as incisive, composed, and unsettlingly precise. She graduated top of her class in behavioral psychology. Her academic focus, emotional regulation disorders and psychopathy within familial structures. Her thesis, titled Adaptive Narcissism in High-Achieving Women, argued that emotional detachment was often misdiagnosed in high-functioning individuals. She theorized that certain women cultivated charm as armor, using it not just to mask pain, but to control narratives. When FBI analysts reviewed her paper, they flagged entire sections that read like a blueprint of her alleged crimes. Some individuals present as empaths, but operate from cold logic. They learn love as performance, not experience. They mimic grief, mirror joy, manufacture need. It wasn't a confession, but it was revealing. Digging further, investigators found an overlooked incident from Elena's undergraduate years, a hospital report involving her then roommate, Abigail Trask. According to campus records, Abigail was found unresponsive in their dorm room after consuming tea laced with crushed anti-anxiety medication. At the time, it was ruled an accidental overdose. Abigail survived, but transferred schools shortly after. When authorities reached out, she hesitated at first. But after hearing about the Jennings case, she agreed to speak. Elena had this way of knowing exactly when you were weak. She'd console you, make you feel safe, and then twist things. I started doubting my own decisions, even my memory. I never told anyone this before, but I didn't make that tea myself. I don't even drink chamomile. The university never opened an investigation. Elena remained untarnished. But now it became clear this pattern of control, of subtle psychological warfare, stretched back years. Every move Elena made, from her choice of partners to her academic pursuits, was calculated. Not random, not reckless. A former research partner recalled how she often observed rather than participated, even in casual conversation. One night after a seminar, he asked her why she always stayed so composed. She told me emotions were like theater, that some people are born into the audience, and others learn to write the script. That quote haunted him when the murders surfaced. It made everything feel rehearsed, designed. She had few close friendships. None lasted more than a few months. Elena cycled through social circles the way some people switch accents, fluidly, convincingly, then suddenly gone. Even in relationships, she adapted to whatever image her partner desired. One ex-boyfriend described her as the ideal woman for the first 6 weeks, then a stranger who knew all my weaknesses. Then came something unexpected. Detectives found that 6 years ago, Elena and a former fiancé, Ryan Kessler, had vacationed at a lake house in Vermont. He was a venture capital analyst, charismatic, successful, and at the time deeply in love. But by the end of that trip, Ryan cut off all contact, changed numbers, moved to a new city. Friends said he became paranoid, isolated. His family declined all interviews. But one reporter tracked down a sealed civil case, filed under initials, later withdrawn, alleging emotional coercion, financial manipulation, and psychological experimentation. The complaint was never formally heard, but the language mirrored patterns now surfacing in Elena's life. She didn't leave scars in the traditional sense. She planted doubt. She left people questioning their own truth. Perhaps most chilling was a leather-bound journal found in Elena's bedroom. At first, investigators thought it was hers. But as they turned the pages, they realized it wasn't written by her. It was about her. Dozens of pages, written in shaky handwriting, described a slow mental breakdown. The words suggested paranoia, obsession, fear. But the author was unknown. Handwriting analysts concluded the author was Denise Jennings, her mother. She watches me watching her. She knows when I sleep. She always smiles, but her eyes don't follow. The entries grew more frantic in the weeks leading up to the poisoning. In one, Denise wrote, "I think she's preparing something. I just don't know what. She keeps asking about the life insurance. She leaves vitamins on my bedside table, even when I say no. I wake up tired, dizzy. Something's wrong. But Carl won't see it." Carl never responded to the journal, but his bank records showed unusual withdrawals around the same time. Perhaps he suspected something, or maybe he too doubted what he felt. It painted a haunting portrait, not of madness, but of a woman slowly realizing her daughter might be orchestrating something unthinkable. For 48 days, the name Elena Jennings hovered in law enforcement systems across 13 states. Her face appeared on digital billboards, crime shows, and shared wanted lists. But there was no sign of her, no fingerprints, no credit card use, not even a whisper. She had vanished into America's undercurrent. Then, on day 49, something strange happened. A single bus ticket was purchased in cash at a station in Salem, Oregon. The destination, a remote township in Montana. No surveillance footage. No ID. Just one detail caught an officer's eye. The buyer had requested a quiet seat near the back, away from windows. It was the same phrasing used in Elena's old university travel logs. It was a sliver of a clue, but it was enough. Montana's Bitterroot Mountains stretched like a jagged scar across the map. Isolated cabins dotted the landscape. No cell reception. Few residents. A perfect place to disappear. An interagency team from the U.S. Marshals and FBI tracked cabin rental logs, looking for aliases that fit Elena's known preferences. Names with literary roots, quiet solitude, and cash-only rentals. One matched. A woman calling herself Lena Harrow had rented a cabin 6 miles off a forestry road. The caretaker said she paid in full, didn't speak much, and brought a crate of books on psychology and classical literature. But what stood out wasn't what she brought. It was what she left behind. A torn envelope in the trash. The return address, a women's shelter in Tacoma, Washington. Inside, written on the back of a magazine page, was a single sentence. To understand a person fully, one must disappear from them completely. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting matched a university paper Elena submitted her senior year. That was enough for a warrant. The tactical unit arrived at dawn. Thick fog clung to the evergreens. The cabin sat half-collapsed, built against a rocky incline, shielded from aerial view. They approached silently. No movement inside. The windows were covered in thick curtains, the front porch abandoned. But as they circled the rear, a motion sensor light clicked on. Inside, someone was awake. A negotiator called out her alias. "Lena, we know you're in there. You're not in danger. We just want to talk." No response. Only the sound of a kettle whistling, shrill and relentless. Then a voice. Calm. Measured. "I'm not running anymore." After 20 minutes of careful dialogue, the front door opened. Slowly, Elena Jennings stepped out, wrapped in a beige sweater. No shoes. No makeup. No expression. She did not resist. She simply extended her wrists and said, "You've finally caught the shadow, but you'll never find the truth." Elena was taken to a secure federal facility for psychiatric evaluation. But from the beginning, it was clear. She was not interested in explaining herself. She didn't deny the murders, but she also didn't admit to them. Instead, she played a game. She asked questions. What makes a victim? Is it weakness or trust? Do you think empathy is always real, or just well-rehearsed? One agent described her presence as disarming, like staring at a painting and realizing too late the eyes are following you. A clinical psychiatrist spent over 20 hours interviewing her across 5 sessions. He emerged visibly shaken. She doesn't see the world the way we do. She operates in patterns, yes, but not moral ones. She doesn't experience guilt. She experiences strategy. They pressed her on Denise and Carl, on the poison, the insurance money, the vanishing acts. She smiled. Just once. My mother taught me how to fake love. My father taught me how to calculate silence. I simply honored them both. As the case headed toward trial, prosecutors were confident. The evidence was circumstantial but chillingly consistent. Insurance policy trails, psychological patterns, suspect timeline gaps. But then came a discovery that fractured the case and stunned investigators. In a storage locker rented under a false name, agents found Elena's final card to play. 3 handwritten letters, each signed and dated. One from Carl Jennings, one from Denise, one from Ryan Kessler. They were not confessions, but warnings. Statements that they feared Elena was capable of manipulation, but lacked proof. Carl's letter was the most revealing. If anything happens to me or your mother, know that we made our own choices. She just made it easier to forget the cost. Legal teams debated their use. Defense attorneys claimed the letters showed parental negligence and mental trauma, not intent to murder. Prosecutors argued they were silent cries for help from people too afraid to confront the truth. The judge allowed them into evidence. Still, public opinion began to waver. Was Elena Jennings a master manipulator, or the outcome of a family built on emotional erasure? On the morning of her arraignment, Elena appeared in a gray prison-issued sweater, her hair tied back, her posture unreadable. As the judge read the charges, she showed no reaction. But when asked if she had anything to say, she leaned forward slightly and said, "You all see a monster. I see a mirror." The courtroom went silent. No one knew if it was remorse, or performance, or both. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family friends, and a sea of strangers crowded into the small county courthouse in Spokane, Washington. The case of Elena Jennings had become a national sensation, not just for the brutal end to the Jennings family, but for the questions it raised about loyalty, betrayal, and mental illness. Prosecutors wasted no time. They painted Elena as a calculated predator. Their argument, a cold, premeditated act driven by greed, resentment, and years of emotional neglect. They detailed the poisonings, the meticulous planning, the final arson that claimed the lives of her parents and brother. This was not a crime of passion, one prosecutor stated. This was a crime of planning, a deliberate betrayal from within. In contrast, the defense team presented a very different story. They described Elena as a damaged young woman, the product of an emotionally fractured household. She had suffered neglect and manipulation, turning inward to protect herself from a toxic family environment. Elena was a child trapped in a house of fear and silence, the lead defense attorney argued. Her actions, while tragic, are the consequences of untreated trauma. The trial revealed deep fractures within the family's past. Neighbors testified to loud arguments and visible tension. A former teacher recounted Elena's withdrawal and sudden drop in grades. Family friends painted a picture of a household struggling to maintain appearances while simmering with unresolved pain. But the most gripping testimony came from Ryan Kessler, the surviving brother's childhood best friend. He spoke quietly about the last time he saw the family. There was something off about Elena. She didn't speak much, but her eyes, they didn't have the warmth I remembered. The prosecution also brought in forensic experts who meticulously explained how the poison had been administered, tiny doses hidden in food over months, culminating in the final, fatal blaze. When it was Elena's turn to speak, the courtroom held its breath. She described her childhood without tears or anger, only with clinical detachment. I was invisible. The mistakes I made, they were my way of being seen. She spoke of her mother's indifference, her father's emotional distance, and the jealousy simmering between siblings. She admitted to knowing the effects of the poison, but denied intending to kill. Prosecutors' cross-examination was relentless, pointing out inconsistencies and probing for signs of remorse. Elena remained calm, often answering questions with another question. What is remorse when your soul has been bruised for years? After 3 days of intense deliberation, the jury was deadlocked. Some members believed Elena was guilty of all charges, the cold architect of her family's demise. Others saw a woman broken by circumstance, punished for a lifetime of emotional cruelty. Their verdict? guilty of manslaughter, but not first-degree murder. The media frenzy exploded. Social media was divided. Some users labeled Elena a tragic victim of abuse. Others called for the harshest punishment possible. Commentators debated the role of mental health in the justice system. Psychologists and legal experts joined the conversation, discussing the complexity of familial abuse and its effects on criminal responsibility. One clinical psychologist interviewed said, "Elena's case forces us to question where accountability ends and trauma begins. It is a call to better understand the shadowed corners of family dynamics." Elena was sentenced to 15 years in a state mental health facility, with provisions for regular psychological treatment and possible parole. The community where the Jennings family once lived remained haunted, not just by the loss, but by the questions the case left behind. Ryan Kessler returned home, deeply affected by the trial's outcome. He began volunteering at local youth counseling centers, hoping to prevent others from suffering a similar fate. The Jennings tragedy is a stark reminder of the complex, often hidden turmoil within families. It challenges us to recognize the warning signs before tragedy strikes. Who really is the victim in a story of betrayal and loss? Elena Jennings, a young woman shaped by neglect and pain, or the family she destroyed? The answer may be as complicated as the human heart itself. As we close this story, remember, sometimes the most haunting crimes are those that hit closest to home. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more crime stories.